The Arlington National Cemetery lay shrouded in a thick November mist, its endless rows of white headstones standing like silent sentinels under the dim moonlight. Victor Hale, an 80-year-old World War II veteran, shuffled along the gravel path, his cane tapping rhythmically against the ground. His weathered face, lined with the scars of battles long past, was etched with a deep sorrow that had only grown since his wife Ellen's death 6 months ago. Insomnia plagued him, his nights filled with nightmares of gunfire and the screams of his fallen comrades. He came here, to Section 60, seeking peace, hoping to see his squad Jimmy, Carl, and Danny one last time before his own end. The air was cold and damp, carrying the faint scent of wet earth and pine from nearby trees. Victor's medals, pinned to his worn jacket, clinked softly with each step, a reminder of the war that had taken everything but his life. Survivor's guilt weighed on him like a Chanjami had died shielding him from shrapnel in Normandy. Carl to a sniper's bullet in Bastogne, Danny to a mine in the Ardennes. He'd made it home, married Ellen, lived a life they never got. But the voices in his dreams called him back, pleading for him to join them. He reached the graves, their headstones gleaming faintly in the mist. Victor lowered himself onto a nearby bench, his bad leg aching from the cold. "I'm here, boys," he whispered, his voice rough from years of silence. "It's me, Vic." The cemetery was still, the mist muffling distant traffic. Victor pulled out a flask of coffee, sipping slowly, his eyes fixed on the graves. He talked to them, as he often did in his mind, apologizing for surviving, for not being there when the bullets came. The guilt was a constant companion, deepened by Ellen's loss. She'd been his anchor, but now he was adrift, the nightmares worse than ever. As midnight approached, a low, mournful note pierced the silence of trumpet, distant but clear, like a bugle call from a forgotten battlefield. Victor's breath caught, his hands trembling. The note stretched, echoing through the mist, and whispers followed. "Victor, come back," it was Jimmy's voice. Then Carl's, Danny's faint, but unmistakable, layered with pain and longing. His heart pounded, tears welling in his eyes. "Boys," he called, standing unsteadily. The mist swirled, and a pale light flickered among the graves, illuminating shadowy figures kneeling in prayer, their heads bowed. They were soldiers, their uniforms tattered, faces blurred but familiar. Victor reached out, his cane dropping, but the light faded, the trumpet silent, the figures gone. He sank to his knees, sobbing. "Don't leave me," he whispered, his hands clutching the damp earth. The cemetery was quiet again, but the voices lingered in his mind, warm yet desperate. It wasn't fear he felt, it was hope, a chance to see them, to make things right. The next morning, Victor returned, meeting Tom, the caretaker, near the gate. Tom, a Vietnam vet with a limp of his own, noticed Victor's disheveled state. "You look like hell, Vic. Rough night," Victor confided, his voice urgent. "I heard it a trumpet. And them, my squad, calling me." Tom's eyes darkened. Old legend. A bugler from the Civil War, Amos Reed, died unburied. His trumpet calls the restless. "Be careful, Vic. Some calls you don't answer." Victor shook his head. "I need to. They're my brothers." Tom sighed but didn't argue, helping Victor navigate the paths. They talked of war, of loss, of the weight of survival. Victor opened up, his voice cracking. "Jimmy took a bullet for me. I see his face every night, blaming me for living." Tom nodded, his own scars evident. "We all carry that. This place, it can make it worse." Victor spent the day wandering the cemetery, tracing the names on the headstones, leaving small tokens: a cigarette for Jimmy, a poker chip for Carl, a penny for Danny's luck. Flashbacks hit hard, laughing with his squad in a French village, their promises to meet after the war. His guilt was a knife twisting deeper. At a veterans' hall, he shared coffee with others, their stories echoing his. "I hear them," he admitted, his voice low. "My squad, calling from the graves." A woman, a Korean war nurse, nodded. "Some places hold on to the dead." "Be sure you're not holding on too tight." The brake steadied him, but the trumpet's call was relentless. That night he returned, the mist thicker, the air colder. The trumpet sounded earlier, its notes sharper, and the silhouettes appeared, standing in rows, their faces clearer, eyes pleading. "Victor, we're waiting," they whispered, their voices a chorus of pain. He stepped closer, his cane sinking into the earth, and felt a pull as if the mist could swallow him. The lead figure Jimmy reached out, his hand cold, almost solid. The trumpet wailed, and Victor felt his heart stutter, as if the cemetery were claiming him. The figures faded, but their voices lingered, urgent, accusing. Victor confided in Tom at dawn, his body trembling. "They're calling me to join them. But I'm planning a memorial, a proper goodbye for them, for Amos Reed." Tom's eyes softened. "That might work, but you're fading, Victor. Don't let them pull you under." Victor sat by the graves, the mist swirling, the trumpets echo in his ears. His health was failing, the sleepless nights draining him, but his mission was clear. The trumpet wasn't just a call, it was a demand for closure, and Victor feared the memorial might be his last act, binding him to the mist where his comrades waited. The Harlan mansion loomed over the rural New York countryside, its French chateau-inspired spires piercing a gray November sky as Elise Harlan stood on the frost-covered lawn, her breath visible in the chilly air. The real estate agent in her mid-30s, and grappling with her grandfather's recent death and her own failed marriage, had returned to sell the family estate, relic of her French heritage she barely understood due to a decades-old family feud. The falling leaves forming a map to an anonymous grave in the woods had sparked her curiosity, but her focus remained on selling the house to fund a fresh start. Yet the mansion felt alive, its windows like eyes watching her every move. Elise spent the morning exploring the sprawling estate, its ornate halls filled with dust-covered chandeliers and faded tapestries. Her grandfather's stories of his youth in France echoed in her mind, tales of love and loss he shared before the feud estranged them from their relatives. She found a box of family heirlooms in the study letters in French, a locket with a woman's portrait, and a pressed rose. The air grew heavy, and a faint whisper, "Mon amour," brushed her ear, gone as quickly as it came. She shivered, blaming the drafty house, but the leaves outside caught her eye, swirling into the same map-like pattern, pointing deeper into the woods. She called Clara, a local historian and old family friend, to help assess the mansion's value. Clara arrived, her eyes wide as she took in the grandeur. "This place is a gem," she said, running a hand over a carved banister. "But folks say it's cursed, something about a tragedy tied to your family." Elise frowned, the grave flashing in her mind. "Just stories. I need to sell this place. Move on." They toured the mansion, cataloging antiques, a gilded clock, a velvet settee, an antique mirror with a cracked frame. As Elise passed the mirror, a flicker caught her Aja woman's silhouette, fleeting her dress old-fashioned, French. She blinked, seeing only her reflection, her heart racing. "Did you see that?" she asked Clara. Clara shook her head, but her voice wavered. "This house has history." "Be careful what you stir up." Elise pushed the unease aside, focusing on her goal. Over coffee in the kitchen, she opened up to Clara, needing her trust. "My grandfather raised me after my parents died," she said, her voice soft. "He loved this place, but the feud with our French relatives kept us apart. My marriage fell apart because I couldn't let go of that pain. Selling this is my chance to start over." Clara nodded, her own loss surfacing. "I lost my sister to illness. I get wanting a new beginning, but this house, it feels like it's holding on to something." Their bonds strengthened Elise's resolve, but the mansion's energy grew heavier. She visited the town library. Digging into records with Clara, they found mentions of a scandal in the 1940s, her grandfather's time in France. A forbidden love with a woman named Marie, disapproved by both families. The leaves outside reformed the map each night, clearer, leading to the grave. Elise followed it, her boots crunching through the woods, but stopped short, fear creeping in as the path darkened. That evening, she sat in the study, journaling her grief, her grandfather's death, her ex-husband's betrayal, the family feud that left her rootless. The locket's portrait haunted her, the woman's eyes like her own. She felt her grandfather's presence, urging her to understand. But the whisper returned, "Mon amour," louder, from the hallway. She checked, finding nothing. But the mirror reflected a flicker against a woman's shadow, her hand reaching out. Elise's heart pounded, her practical mind wrestling with the impossible. She called Clara, who shared more from the archives, a rumor that Marie died tragically, her story buried by the Harlan family. A man, Mr. Harlan, a distant cousin, contacted Elise. his tone sharp. "Don't dig into the past," he warned. "Sell the house and leave it be." His words chilled her, echoing the feud's secrecy. The leaves formed the map again, pointing to the grave, and Elise felt drawn, as if the mansion itself were guiding her. Her mission to sell was unraveling, the house's secrets tied to her own pain. The whispers and shadows suggested the grave held answers, but as night fell, the mansion's walls seemed to close in, and Elise worried that following the map might cost her more than her fresh start at, might awaken something that refused to stay buried. The Harlan mansion stood like a silent guardian in the rural New York countryside. Its French shadow-inspired spires shrouded in a November fog that clung to the frostbitten lawn. Elise Harlan, the real estate agent in her mid-30s, paced the creaking halls, her heart heavy with her grandfather's death and the collapse of her marriage. Her plan to sell the family estate for a fresh start was unraveling. The falling leaves forming a map to an anonymous grave in the woods stirring a curiosity she couldn't shake. The whispers of Mon Amour and fleeting shadows in the antique mirror had hinted at a forbidden love from her grandfather's past. Tying the mansion's secrets to her own fractured family history, Elise spent the morning in the attic, sifting through dusty trunks, her fingers trembling as she uncovered a leather-bound diary written in French. Its pages brittle with age detailed her grandfather's youth in 1940s France, a passionate affair with Marie, a local woman, forbidden by both families due to a feud over inheritance. The words painted a love cut short, Marie's fate unclear but tragic, her name tied to the Harlan family's shame. Elise read. The air grew colder, and a whisper echoed Mon Amour, clearer, from the attic shadows. She spun, seeing nothing but her pulse raced. Outside, the leaves swirled, reforming the map, its path sharper, leading deeper into the woods. Elise hesitated, the grave's pull stronger, but fear held her back. She called Clara, the historian, who arrived with more archive notes. The scandal was hushed up, Clara said, her voice low. Marie disappeared after your grandfather left France. The Harlans buried something, maybe her. Lisa's stomach twisted, her grandfather's stories of loss echoing in her mind. He never talked about her, she said. But this diary, it's like he left it for me. They explored the mansion, the diary's words heavy. In the parlor, the antique mirror flickered again, showing not Elise, but a woman, Marie. Her dress old-fashioned, her eyes pleading. Elise gasped, stepping back, but the image vanished. Did you see her? She asked Clara, her voice shaking. Clara nodded, pale. This house is holding on to her. Be careful, Elise. Elise's fear grew, but so did her need to understand. She shared more with Clara over tea, needing her ally. My marriage fell apart because I couldn't let go of my family's pain, she said, her voice soft. My grandfather raised me after my parents died in a car crash. The feud with our French relatives left us alone. This house sits all I have left of him. Clara's eyes softened, her own loss surfacing. My sister's death broke me. I get why you're here, but this place feels alive, like it wants you to know. Their bond deepened, grounding Elise, but the mansion's energy darkened. She visited the town library again, digging deeper with Clara. Records hinted at Marie's death, possibly in childbirth, her child hidden by the Harlans, to avoid scandal. The anonymous grave matched descriptions of an unmarked plot on the estate's edge, tied to a disgraced woman. Elise's heart ached, her grandfather's love story mirroring her own failed relationships. Back at the mansion, the leaves formed the map again, its lines vivid under the moonlight. Elise followed it into the woods, her flashlight shaking, but stopped at a clearing where the grave lay, a simple stone, unmarked, covered in leaves. Whispers filled the air, Mon Amour, and she heard her ex-husband's voice, calling her name, stirring her longing and guilt. She fled back to the house, her breath ragged. In the study, she journaled her fears, the diary's words haunting her. Marie's love, her grandfather's regret. The mirror flickered, showing Marie's shadow again, her hand reaching out, as if pleading. Elise's practical mind wrestled with the impossible, but the whispers grew louder, now in French, accusing. Too, as she felt her grandfather's presence, urging her to uncover the truth. But Mr. Harlan, her cousin, called, his voice sharp. Stop digging into the past, he warned. Sell the house, or you'll regret it. His threat chilled her, echoing the family's secrecy. The leaves map reformed outside, pointing to the grave, and Elise felt the mansion's pull, as if Marie herself were guiding her. Her mission to sell was now a quest to understand her grandfather's love and loss. But the whispers and shadows suggested the grave held a truth tied to her own pain. As night deepened, the mansion's walls seemed to breathe. Elise worried that following the map would awaken something that could cost her more than her. Fresh start it might bind her to the house forever. The Harlan mansion stood as a brooding sentinel in the rural New York countryside. Its French shadow-inspired facade cloaked in November's chill fog. Elise Harlan, the real estate agent driven to sell the family estate for a fresh start after her grandfather's death and her own failed marriage, felt the weight of its secrets pressing in. The falling leaves forming a map to an anonymous grave. The French diary revealing her grandfather's forbidden love with Marie, and the fleeting shadows in the antique mirror had turned her practical mission into a haunting quest. The whispers of mon amour and the accusing French phrases echoed her own guilt, tying the mansion's past to her fractured family history. Elise stood in the parlor, her eyes locked on the antique mirror, its cracked frame glinting under the chandelier's dim light. As she stared, the reflection shifted, not her face, but a shadowy couple, her grandfather, young and earnest, embracing Marie, her dress flowing, her eyes filled with longing. Their forms flickered, their hands entwined, then turned to Elise, their gazes pleading. A whisper filled the room, mon amour, soft but piercing, followed by her ex-husband's voice calling her name. Elise, why did you leave? She stumbled back, her heart racing, the mirror showing only her pale reflection again. Clara, the historian, rushed in, her face pale. What happened? You look terrified. Didn't you see them? Elise asked, her voice trembling. My grandfather, a woman marine, the mirror. Clara's eyes widened, clutching her notebook. This house is holding their story, it's not letting go. Elise's fear surged, the diary's words vivid Marie's love, forbidden by family feuds, ending in tragedy. She dug through the attic, finding more letters. One mentioning Marie's death and childbirth, the child possibly her grandfather hidden to avoid scandal. The grave in the woods, unmarked, was likely Marie's, its secrecy tied to the Harlan family's shame. Elise's stomach twisted, her own failed marriage echoing the forbidden love. Her guilt over leaving her ex-husband resurfacing. Outside, the leaves swirled, reforming the map, its path clearer, pointing to the grave. Elise hesitated, fear battling her need to understand. She shared her findings with Clara over coffee, needing her Elise's strength. My grandfather never told me about Marie, she said, her voice soft. He raised me after my parents died, but the feud cut us off from our French family. I feel like he's asking me to find her. Clara nodded, her own loss surfacing. My sister's death left me alone. I get why you're drawn to this, it's like finding family again. Her bond steadied Elise, but the mansion's energy grew darker. She visited the town library, uncovering more. Marie was a French immigrant, her love with Elise's grandfather opposed by both families. Her death was hushed up, the grave unmarked to erase her. Mr. Harlan. Her cousin arrived unannounced, his polished demeanor jarring. You're digging up trouble, he said, his eyes cold. Sell the house and leave the past alone, or you'll lose everything. His threat chilled her, echoing the family's secrecy. You know about Marie, don't you? Elise pressed. Why hide it? Harlan's smile was tight. Focus on the sale, Elise. Don't make enemies. She stood her ground, but his words lingered. That night, alone in the study, she journaled her fears, the mirror's shadows haunting her. She heard her father's voice, killed in the car crash, with her mother pleading, find her. The connection to her grandfather's loss felt too close, as if the mansion were weaving their pain together. She approached the mirror, the couple appearing again, their embrace desperate, Marie's eyes accusing. The whisper returned. Taz and Elise felt a cold hand brush her shoulder, though no one was there. She fled to the lawn, the leaves forming the map under moonlight, its lines vivid, leading to the grave. She followed, her flashlight shaking, reaching the clearing. The unmarked stones seemed to pulse, whispers filling the air. Mon amour. Elise's heart pounded, her practical mind crumbling. She returned to the house, the mirror now dark, but the shadows lingered in her mind. Her mission to sell was now a quest to uncover Marie's truth. But Harlan's warning and the mansion's growing unrest suggested danger. Clara's fear and her own vulnerability worried her. And as the leaves swirled outside, Elise knew the grave held answers that could either free her grandfather's legacy or trap her in the mansion's haunted embrace forever. The Harlan mansion loomed in the rural New York fog. Its French shadow-inspired spires casting jagged shadows across the frostbitten lawn. Elise Harlan, the real estate agent driven to sell the family estate to escape her grandfather's death and her failed marriage, felt the house's secrets tightening around her, the falling leaves forming a map to an anonymous grave, the French diary revealing her grandfather's forbidden love with Marie, and the shadowy couple in the antique mirror had transformed her mission into a haunting quest. The whispers of mon amour, the accusing French phrases, and the visions of her ex-husband and father had woven her grief into the mansion's past. Pulling her toward a truth she feared to face, Elise stood in the grand hall, her breath shallow as a faint violin melody drifted up from the basement. Mournful and unplaceable, though the house had no instruments. The sound curled through the air, laced with whispers mon amour, and her ex-husband's voice pleading, "Come back, Elise." Her heart raced, the mirror's shadows fresh in her mind, her grandfather and Marie. Their embrace desperate, their eyes accusing. She grabbed a flashlight and descended the creaking basement stairs. The air growing colder, thicker, with the scent of damp stone and something sweeter, like roses. The basement was a maze of crates and forgotten relics. The violin music swelled, guiding her to a dusty trunk. Inside, she found artifacts of Marie's life, a locket matching the diary's portrait, love letters in French, and a faded photograph of a young woman, her eyes Elise's own. The music stopped abruptly, but a whisper echoed. Two as in, the air tightened, as if the house were watching. Elise's hands trembled, the diary's story vivid. Marie's death in childbirth. Her child, her grandfather, hidden to bury the scandal. Outside, the leaves reformed the map, its lines stark under the moonlight, leading to the grave. Elise followed, her boots crunching through the woods, fear battling her need for answers. At the clearing, the unmarked stone pulsed with a faint glow, and whispers surrounded her. Marie. Mon amour, a vision flashed. Marie, dying alone, her love forbidden, her child taken. Elise's father's voice joined in. From the car crash that killed her parents, find her. Tears streamed down her face, her guilt over her failed marriage and family feud surging. Returned to the mansion, calling Clara, the historian, who arrived pale but determined. I found more records, Clara said, her voice low. Marie was a gardener's daughter, not an immigrant. The Harlans erased her identity to protect their name. Elise's stomach twisted, her cousin, Mr. Harlan's threat echoing, "Sell the house, or you'll regret it." She shared the basement findings with Clara, her voice shaking. The music, the grave, it's Marie, reaching out. She wants her story told. Clara clutched her notebook, her own loss surfacing. My sister's death taught me to face pain. This house sits using your grief, Elise. Their bond steadied her, but the mansion's energy darkened. Mr. Harlan arrived, his eyes cold. You're meddling in things you don't understand, he snapped. Stop this, or the sale's off. You're hiding her, Elise shot back, holding the locket. Marie's grave, your family buried her to save face. Harlan's face tightened, but he stormed out, his silence damning. The violin music returned louder from the basement, and Elise felt a pull as if Marie were guiding her. She descended again, the air icy, the music a wail. The locket grew warm in her hand, and the mirror upstairs flickered, showing Marie's shadow alone, her face anguished. Then her grandfather, his head bowed in shame. Elise's ex-husband's voice called again. Why did you leave? Blending with her father's. Tell her story. She broke down, confiding in Clara. I failed my marriage, my family. This house, it's making me face that, but it's Marie's pain too. I need to honor her. Clara nodded, tears in her eyes. I'm scared, but I'm with you. Elise planned a ceremony at the grave, hoping to give Marie peace. The leaves' map glowed brighter, the violin's melody a desperate plea. Visions assaulted her. Marie's death, her grandfather's guilt, her own losses worrying her sanity. Harlan's threat loomed, his motives tied to the family's shame. The mansion wasn't just haunted, it was alive, demanding justice for Marie. As the music swelled, Elise feared the ceremony might free the spirits, but cost her the sale, trapping her in the house's embrace. The grave waited, and the whispers grew louder, pulling her toward a reckoning she wasn't sure she could survive. The Harlan mansion stood like a brooding relic in the rural New York fog, its French chateau-inspired spires piercing the November gloom. Elise Harlan, the real estate agent, driven to sell the family estate to escape her grandfather's death and her failed marriage, was now entangled in its haunting secrets. The falling leaves forming a map to an anonymous grave, the French diary revealing her grandfather's forbidden love with Marie, the shadowy couple in the antique mirror, and the violin music from the basement had woven her grief into the mansion's past. The whispers of Mon Amour, her ex-husband's and father's voices, and the revelation that Maria Gardner's daughter died in childbirth, her identity erased by the Harlans, had turned Elise's mission into a quest for justice. Mr. Harlan's threats to block the sale loomed, but the mansion demanded a reckoning. Elise organized a ceremony at the grave, her heart pounding as she gathered Clara, the historian, and a small group of townsfolk in the woods under a moonlit sky. The unmarked stone, covered in leaves, seemed to pulse, the air thick with the scent of roses and damp earth. She held Marie's locket, its warmth steadying her, and spoke, her voice trembling but clear. "We're here to honor Marie Dubois, a woman erased by my family's shame. She loved my grandfather, bore his child, and died alone. Tonight we give her a name." Clara lit candles, their flames flickering in the fog, while a local pastor offered a prayer for the forgotten. Leaves swirled, reforming the map, its lines glowing faintly, pointing to the grave. As Elise placed the locket on the stone, the violin music surged from the mansion, a haunting melody that shook the trees. Whispers filled the air. Mon Amour and the antique mirror shadows appeared in her mind. Marie and her grandfather, embracing, their faces peaceful. The townsfolk, thinking it a historical tribute, listened solemnly, but the mansion's energy peaked. The leaves spiraled upward, forming a figure Marie, her dress flowing, her eyes grateful. Her grandfather's shadow joined her, his hand on her shoulder, and Elise heard her father's voice. From the car crash that took her parents, "You did it, Elise." Her ex-husband's voice, pleading for her return, fell silent, replaced by Marie's whisper, "Merci." Mr. Harlan arrived, his face pale, his voice sharp. "Stop this nonsense. You're ruining everything." Elise faced him, the locket glowing in her hand. "Your family buried Marie to hide their shame. She deserves this." The violin wailed, and the leaves formed a final map, its lines pointing to Harlan. He stumbled back, his eyes wide. "My grandfather ordered her death covered up," he confessed, his voice breaking. "I kept it quiet to protect the family, naming the sale." The crowd gasped, the truth no longer a ritual, but a reckoning. The leaves fell still, the music softened, and Marie's shadow smiled, fading into the fog. The grave's glow dimmed, the whispers silent, and the mansion's oppressive weight lifted. The ceremony ended, the townsfolk murmuring, some believing it staged, others shaken by the confession. Harlan fled, his reputation shattered, soon facing legal scrutiny for concealing historical records. Elise returned to the mansion, the mirror dark, its shadows gone. Clara hugged her, tears in her eyes. "You gave her peace," she said, her own grief eased. "You're braver than I am." Elise's heart ached, her guilt over her marriage and family feud lighter. "I did it for her, for my grandfather," she said, feeling his presence, proud and calm. Days later, a letter arrived. The mansion was classified as a protected historical site due to Marie's story. Halting the high-value sale, Lisa's fresh start was gone, her finances strained, but the house felt warm, no longer haunted. She sat in the study, journaling her closure, Marie's locket beside her. The leaves outside lay still, no longer forming maps, and the violin was silent. She'd lost the sale, but found her heritage, reconnecting with her French roots through Marie's story. As she locked the mansion, a faint whisper lingered. Mon Amour, soft, not accusing, but watchful. Elise froze, her breath catching, wondering if the spirits were truly gone or if the house still held their echo. She walked into the fog, the mansion behind her, its spires a reminder of the cost of truth. Her mission was complete, Marie honored, but the whisper hinted the past was never fully silent. And Elise wondered if the house would call again, binding her to its legacy forever.